Welcome to Coach Connect Hub and our weekly training this week. We've actually had a weekly training, so now I can say weekly training. And our special guest today is Maya Jewell. Maya is a cultural fluency mentor. And what that means, Maya helps us understand how to have conversations about race. And Maya, I'm going to just let you take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. It is my privilege. My name is Maya Jewell. I am the founder of Authentically Transformative Leadership Associates, and that's a big name that I am trying to grow into. I'm a disabled entrepreneur who came to the DEI space um, a couple of years ago. I don't believe that most of what we're doing is working, and and in order to make authentic change, I really believe that I've have some ideas and some thoughts, and have had many conversations with people and how to make structural change to their companies. I was raised a very Black child in a very white environment, and biculturality, I would say, is my native tongue. And inclusion has been my natural habitat for my entire life. So I teach people how to have more connection and inclusion and belonging in their lives and in their companies. And so today we're going to have an introductory conversation about something that I think is so important. And that is how coaches can begin the process of having more connection with their BIPOC clients. It's a hard conversation to get into for some, and some of you may have had experiences where that have brought you to this process. So I'm a little nervous because this is my first presentation. I'm usually a facilitator, so when we get to the Q&A part, I'll be super excited. But for right now, I'm gonna get right into the material. And then the first question, of course, is how do we even get into the issue of identity? We've learned that identity is really has become something that people are realizing is really important to people. It's central to their lives. And the question becomes, in coaching spaces, how do we get into it? Well, the first step, I say, is don't assume that you have to. Because the person may not be interested in actually discussing their identity with their coach. People come to coaching for all kinds of reasons. And one way of getting into it, though, is to if you want to ease into it, you can ask kind of probing questions, or kind of like do a hey, did you hear about this incident? And what did you think about this incident? And then kind of observe your client's response and kind of follow their clues, as their their cues, as far as whether or not it looks like it's gonna be a conversation that they're interested in having. The other approach is to just be direct. And let me tell you, I'm going to be speaking to you from a Black perspective. I believe that a lot of things that we do in belonging and inclusion have a lot of crossover, but there are special things that different groups need, and I don't know all of the things. And so one of the things that I say is that, especially for Black clients, the direct approach is you'll almost never go wrong with the direct approach. So simply asking, are there aspects of your identity that you want considered in our coaching space, is a good way to go. And then you can also ask them for guidance as far as like how they want to approach it. I'm gonna share my screen with you for a moment. So you want to avoid assumptions, ask probing questions, and then just ask. um, the next part is now that you know, now let's say you know that race is a topic that your client wants to address. How to get into it and how to manage it is the next step. And I would say to be proactive. It is so important to be proactive. Um, once the subject is on the table, especially after the first time you guys talk about it, there's going to be some concern on behalf of your client, most likely, about whether or not they've disrupted the energy of your relationship with them. Because I can speak for myself. One of the things that is kind of it's scary. I've been in therapy for a long time. As I say, I'm disabled, so therapy helps me cope. And I would say I'd been seeing my therapist since 2014. We didn't talk about race until 2020. So this is not something that's natural for many marginalized people to feel comfortable putting on the table. Then once we do, there's some concern about whether or not it's welcome. So if you follow up in the next meeting and say, hey, I know we talked about this. Would you, how is that going? Or how are you feeling about this? And it builds trust in the coaching relationship, builds trust in you as a coach. And it also it surfaces other elements of identity that might warrant explanation or exploration. Let me just get to our presentation. Sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I think I'll just keep it up there because you can still see me, right? Even with the
When you have your slides up, we can see you and we can
okay,
hear you. Yeah.
awesome. That's good to know. Thank you so much. Okay. Okay. So, and the trick, and you can see the slide now.
No, can't see the slides.
No.
You have to hit share screen.
Okay. Why isn't it? Okay, there we are.
Perfect.
It's important if you live in a cis not if you live in a cis white able body, it is important to remember that while identity might be incidental to you, it can be central for those who are on the margins and for racialized folks. So it might seem like a topic to bring up once or twice, but believe me, it's something that's part of their daily lives. Now, the question, how do we respond if a client brings up an incident of racism? Well, validate, my rule of thumb is to validate first, understand later. The first step number one, express appreciation for their trust. So thank them for sharing. Ask them how they're feeling, check in with them, and make sure they're okay. And then ask what they need from you as their coach in this moment. The understand later piece is you're going to need to trust their understanding of their own experience. Don't try to figure out, okay, now, because the natural question, if this isn't something that you have a lot of experience with in your day-to-day life, It's to say, what was it? I mean, but was it really about race? That work is for you and for you to do later with your journal or with Google or a friend or a mentor. Doubting them in that moment is not worth eroding the trust that you've established with them. The thing is that I have been Black all of my life. I know the difference in when I walk into a, I know immediately if race is an issue. I see it in the person's face. I've seen that expression so many times in my 49 years that it's not really possible for me to get it wrong. But let me tell you, in spite of that, I will have gone over the situation like a dozen times in my own mind before I even talk about it once, if I talk about it at all. So it's not worth it to kind of like, and the major, one of the major experiences of marginalized folks is the gaslighting. That is like one of the most damaging parts of racism, is the constant doubting of what you saw you did not see, what you experienced you did not experience, and that is just really poison to bring into your relationship with your client. And the next part is how you handle yourself. Self-awareness in these moments is key. And I know this is going to sound silly, but you're going to have to remind yourself that it's not personal. What happens for some people who are in white bodies, especially, is they start to feel a little defensive just hearing about someone's experience of racism. You want to make sure you keep your focus on the client. Don't attempt to like relate by saying, well, I know what that's like because this happened to me. I'm going to promise you, you can't. Every community that is on the margins experiences it, its history with it is different. And their responses to it are different. And then and that's before you even get down to the individual level of how it's affecting that person in the moment. I'll be real with you. I probably, as a Black person, I probably have the most in common with Indigenous folks as far as the level and history of oppression that we've experienced in the country. I cannot relate to their experience. And so I would never, ever, if someone was talking to me about the missing and murdered Indigenous women, I would not start talking about, how the abuses that Black women have experienced as well, because it's a completely different situation. And what it serves to do is to flatten and twist and extract the essence of the experience that your client is having. And it also makes it impossible for you to learn about that. It's really hard to understand, but unless you're willing to engage with the situation as it's happening to the other person, you're just never ever going to be able to even like start cracking the door on sort of understanding what people of color are experiencing. And another part of this is to have awareness of your feelings. Be careful not to let your own feelings about the incident start to override your awareness of your clients, because these situations are maddening. They are ridiculous. They are frustrating. I know that for myself, one of the things I've had to help my therapist through, I've been coaching my therapist a little bit, is my reaction is not gonna be, he's like, you must just be enraged. And I said, no, I'm tired. But he was enraged. He says, I guess I'm enraged. I said, exactly. You want to make sure that you are really tuned in to your client's experience in this moment and how you could be most useful to them. Other part, this is one of my favorite bits to talk about with my white clients, is to avoid the good personing and issues talking about race. They are completely separate issues. Being a good person and being racially problematic are completely separate. One has absolutely nothing to do with the other. So when this happens, sometimes for people, there's a reaction I've noticed that for some people kicks in when the conversation turns to race. There's like, it's like their nervous system gets activated and they feel the need to like prove, okay, wait, look, you're safe with me, I'm not like that person, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Trust. If your client, especially your Black clients, if they're talking to you about race at all, they already know that. And they probably are more even likely they're more aware of your racially problematic areas than you are, because it's a survival mechanism. It's something that we've had to learn over years and years. And I would say be careful about expressing shock or anger on your client's behalf. I told you about me and my therapist. Because this is not surprising. Racism is something that has been with us since before the founding of this country. It is something that we enshrined in our laws. And frankly, at this stage, especially for the younger generation of, especially for the younger generation of Black people, it is enraging. It is frustrating, the amount of shock and surprise and indignation that some of our experiences are met with, because this is nothing new. It can be supportive, which is why I say be careful. I don't say don't do it. This is where, maintaining the focus on the client is so key here, because they might need that little bit of, oh, that's terrible. But you really have to watch their cues and see whether that's helping or hurting. And you can ask them straight out, hey, in this moment, I'm having some pretty big feelings about it, but I don't want to override what's going on with you. So you tell me, is my anger going to feel supportive right now, or is it going to feel like it's drowning your responses? So, and remember, the focus should be on what will make your client feel most supported in the moment. And my final step here is, how can you help clients cope? This is a biggie, and it might not seem like it. It seems like we should probably already, that they should be able to tell you how to help them cope. But I'm going to be real with you. This part of the conversation is not a part of the conversation that my community has. I learned I was Black when I was 5 years old. I learned when a schoolmate who had asked to be my friend on Friday told me that he couldn't be my friend on Monday because his mom said that I was an N-word and that he couldn't be friends with them. I did not know what an N-word was. So I went home and I asked my mom, and she began the work of teaching me that duality. I think I can't remember if it's Du Bois who talks about it, that all Black people live with, which is building my sense of self, but also my sense of situational awareness that keeps me safe, to understand how the world sees me, but also trying to instill in me the sense that how the world sees me has nothing to do with who I actually am as a person. But the one thing that we never got around to was what to do with all this. When these things happen, what to do with it. Most of us, we pack this stuff in these experiences, we pack them in boxes and put it away and get on with business of life. And we don't, and we just kind of like hope that the box doesn't get too big or start rattling around too much and start making a mess. But for many of us, we get to a certain point in our life where we need to start unpacking things. And so it's important to kind of be aware of when you might need to point your client into the direction of therapy. But when it comes to racial incidents themselves, self-care is key. And they may need you to tell them that. Because as I said, the conversation of how to cope is not a conversation we ever really have. So self-care, 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 self-care. So you want to help them to create a self-care plan for whether it is like day-to-day stuff that they're dealing with at their work in terms of microaggressions. Corporate America is very hard on Black people, or whether it is an incident. You want to help them to create different plans for how to deal with what they are dealing with. And you want to be their accountability partner in it. Because again, that is not a piece that it's a little counterintuitive to us. And for many of us, and after a racist incident, you want to remind them to account for the energy that they needed to process, that they need to process that situation emotionally and mentally, because they are doing all the things that you're doing within their lives. They are building their businesses. They are picking their kids up from school and shuttling them to soccer and football and fighting with their husbands and their wives. And they are doing all of the things, but then they also have this added thing that just happened that is frankly a trauma. And so to remind them not to, like, if they feel a little extra tired, to help them to remember to understand why, and not to lean into self-criticism of there was so much I was supposed to get done this week and I just didn't get it all because blah 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 blah. And so reminding them that this is a trauma, and to make space for self-care, to make space to process, and to have compassion for themselves. So this is the end of this is the end. We're coming to the very end and we're getting ready to start the Q&A, which I'm very excited about. The final point is how we coach racial issues is very much the same as how we coach many, many others. And I always say, have regard and respect for heritage, but embrace the individual. So each person is going to have a different reaction. Each person, there are a number of reactions. There's a galaxy of reactions that people have to being racialized in America. But the one thing that we all want is we want to be embraced as an individual. We want to be connected with for who we actually are. That duality, not the person that people imagine a person in a particular body to be, but to be the person that my mom taught me I was, and to have that part of me embraced. So yes, please do respect, have regard for, the challenges and the triumphs of my heritage, but also to be willing to embrace me as a person, the little girl that my mom, taught was super special and amazing in a lot of ways. And that brings me to the end of my thing. It's always about the client. And I want to thank you so much for being here with me today and for sharing this time with me. I hope that it has been helpful and beneficial. And I'm also hoping that you guys have thoughts and questions that you would like to explore.
Thank you, Maya. Oh my goodness, Julia, before I stop the recording, Maya, I don't normally do this. This is out of, however, Julia texted me, and Julia, can you repeat, because I want this part on the recording. Then I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to go into discussion. So Julia, I want Maya to hear this on the recording.
Okay, this is one of the best presentations on BIPOC people and being in relationship with both our BIPOC clients and our BIPOC friends, period.
Wow. Yay. Thank you so much. It's amazing. I'm glad to hear it. Oh, wow.
Thank you, Maya.
I really like how you broke it down. Okay, you broke it down into very simple things. Here's 3 things to remember here. Here's 3 to do. And 3 things that we want to avoid.
1 second, Julia.
Okay.
1 second. Because those of you that are watching the recording, this is the whole reason why I do these and have them in presentation style, so that people can get the material, because they either don't have time to show up or for whatever reason can't be here, but they want the material. However, when you're here, we get into the deep discussion. So this is why I stopped the recording and we get to have a discussion. So thank you so much, Maya.